Before diving into Wavelengths, I want to ask, Mary, what's made Steph such a captivating character to revisit? And Katie, what's made Steph such a wonderful character to bring life to?
Steph is just so fun. I remember even back in the Before the Storm days when the idea of Steph was kind of conceptualized. It was sort of like all the writers kind of instantly knew who she was. Like she was just so singular and clear and interesting to all of us. And to see fans respond so positively to her in Before the Storm as one of the few characters that we kind of got to actually create ourselves, given that it was a prequel, it's been really, really fun to just keep getting to write content for her and to age her up and see what a more mature, grown-up Steph looks and feels like. Yeah, and she's just so cool and nerdy and just so fun to write.
Yeah, and being able to bring life back to her again has just been an honor, and I'm grateful. And just to see the fans' reaction and to know that they get to see a familiar face and one that they, was a fan favorite from Before the Storm, I think that that's really special. And I'm happy to be able to be a part of breathing more life back into her, especially with Wavelengths.
We've seen Steph's character progress substantially over the course of the main True Colors story, but where is she at the time of Wavelengths? Like, she's clearly gone through some stuff since the last time we saw her in Before the Storm.
Yeah, so the Wavelengths actually happens the year before Alex arrives. So you get to go and experience all 4 seasons with Steph up until Alex's arrival in True Colors.
And we kind of get a taste of this at the beginning of Wavelengths, but what makes Steph the right DJ for this small town record store?
Right? I think as you can see in the trailer, she's kind of just faking it to make it. And it works out in her benefit in the end. And she obviously, as you see in True Colors, it's perfect for her. And she kind of just hops into something she feels like she, can do. And maybe she's not sure of it in the beginning, and she might be a little weird and awkward, but she gets her footing. And then she becomes extremely comfortable. And I think that, with her DMing skills, she's very good on her feet and quick on her feet with improvising and figuring it out for herself.
Yeah, I think Steph is very much a character who brings all of her to everything that she does. And in this, small record store / radio station in this small town, she just breathes life back into it just by being herself.
With Mary, you sort of touched on this earlier. With True Colors and Wavelengths, we've seen a more grown up, a more mature Steph, sort of aged up. Katie, how different was your approach to this character for this particular game as opposed to how you approached her for Before the Storm?
Definitely. I think, me personally as an actor, I think I aged up as well, and I think going back into the booth and into the studio, I experienced, how to bring that to Steph and how it would be different with Steph. And the writing really helped to make that an easy process. It was mature writing for the character as well. How is Steph going to talk now? What are the kinds of things she's going to say? What are the kinds of things she's into? So the writing and the narrative team really helped that process with me as an actor. And it was just, really finding her voice and, her body and figuring out what happened to her, in BTS and where she has come from and how she got there.
And I really do think I speak for the narrative team when I say that, like, Katie, you were such a big part of that process, and getting to do the mocap kind of all together at once. We really got to drill down on, is this what Steph would do if this much time has passed? Is this really right? And it was just so nice to be able to really feel that out and get it right with the original voice of Steph. The whole thing was so fun.
From what I've seen of the DLC so far, the setting's the same. We see some of the same characters pop up from the main True Colors narrative. What steps were taken to make Wavelengths feel uniquely like Steph's story?
Yeah, I think we definitely wanted to, because at least in part because we knew we were going to be producing this in a unprecedented pandemic. So we knew that we wanted to keep the cast of characters limited. And at first that was kind of challenging for us because a lot of characterization comes from how people play off of one another. But we found that in having just kind of Steph, mostly just alone at work in the record store or in the booth, it was just so focused on her. Everything was about her, getting in her head, figuring out her life, reliving some past memories, all of that stuff. It was just all about Steph, start to finish.
That sort of segues pretty well into this next question. Katie, what were some of the challenges of recording for this role during this pandemic period? I know that there are certain things that you can do at home, like, record your voice lines and everything, but when it comes to mocap, like, what are the challenges in making that happen, and how did this whole process change?
Definitely, yeah. So, I was contacted by our mocap producer, Corwin, and he was like, "We want to do the DLC. How is this going to look for you? How are you going to feel comfortable doing it?" And, from that moment on, I knew that they were looking out for me as an actor, as a person, as somebody who's been very cautious during the entire pandemic. And right away, I felt comfortable. And, they made every step of the way so easy for me. When we had to go in and do the cinematics. And I went in a few times, and everybody, was masked up. They had face shields. There was a small amount of people on the set in the mocap room, and they were all so understanding of the situation and took the extreme safety precautions that they could, and for my comfort as well. And then we did the rest of the stuff that we needed voiceover wise here in my apartment virtually. So yeah, it worked out honestly like better than I could have ever imagined.
How did you, Mary, from a narrative standpoint, and Katie from a performance standpoint, how did you approach this dating app section, and how were you able to successfully capture what I can only describe as the awkwardness of putting yourself out there? And is anything especially challenging about capturing that from a queer perspective?
Well, speaking at least for myself, I have plenty of personal experience with awkwardly putting yourself out there. So I think we had a good pool of lived experience just within ourselves to draw from in that. But I also think that, dating apps are increasingly a way that young people meet each other and have to take those steps is through that sort of weird digital format. And so we really just tried to make that as authentic as possible by drawing as much as we could from our own awkward forays.
And I think too, with the fact that Steph is alone, she's trying to figure out all this stuff, she's like, you know what, I'm lonely. I need to try this thing out, right? And I think that says a lot for the last year and a half for a lot of people in the pandemic. We've been isolated. So there's a lot of people on dating apps trying to not be lonely. And I think that people can relate to that when they play this game and see themselves in the awkwardness and in just trying to make a connection anywhere they can while being, solitary.
I have to ask, just because I loved that main True Color story so much, there's a big moment in the early chapters where we find out that Gabe is probably the primary reason that Steph didn't leave Haven Springs. Do we explore that a little more in Wavelengths?
We definitely, we explore Gabe and Steph's relationship definitely in more depth in Wavelengths than we were able to in True Colors, just because, Gabe gets so little screen time. But I think, as we'll see, it's not a one-sided relationship where Gabe does Steph this big favor and she doesn't give him anything back. We really get to see how they help each other learn and grow over the course of Steph's time there.
And last question, and I know this is a challenging one because, of course, you want to avoid spoilers, but is there a particular moment from Wavelengths that you look fondly at and you feel like that's really going to resonate with the player base?
I think for me, just going back to like the whole isolation aspect of it, and kind of mirroring that a little bit for the player, I think they're going to connect with that. Just as the actor who was performing, these lines and performing this character, I was able to connect with that. And it made me, feel stronger, I guess, in the whole pandemic wise, that, if Steph can be alone and find herself, I can too. And I hope that other players can feel that way as well.
Yeah, I think my answer, without going into too much detail, the summer portion of the DLC focuses pretty heavily on Pride. And I think that there's a lot of content in there in Steph's memories of Pride that she's been to in the past, and in a lot of that content that surrounds that I think will really click with a lot of our audience.
That sounds wonderful. And, it didn't really click to me right now until you answered right now, Katie, that I feel like more of your performance as Steph really was affected by the pandemic. I mean, the pandemic really kind of fed into your performance. I mean, would you say that's true?
Yeah, I mean, I think just, as an actor, we pull a lot from our lives, to breathe into the character and breathe into the writing. And yeah, definitely, I would say that 100%.
Mallory, Katie, thank you so much. And we look forward to playing Wavelengths when it comes out on September the 30th.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.